welcome to you today to the Cabinet meeting on the 14th of December 2021.
We'll go to the agenda. There's quite a big agenda today, so if we can focus the conversation, please, on the reports in hand and the recommendations required, that would be helpful. Thank you for that. So we'll go to the agenda. Apologies. Any apologies? No apologies. Declarations of interest.
Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal or personal and prejudicial interest today that has not previously been discussed, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available online.
Thank you. Gary, does anybody want to declare an interest at this stage? No? Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. Urgent matters? No urgent matters. Good. Okay, we'll go to agenda 4. The minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of November. First of all, for accuracy, please, page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. For matters arising, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. Okay, thank you. Can someone propose that they're correct, please? I think that's Mark, and seconded by Tony, and everyone's in agreement. Okay, thank you for that. We'll go on now to agenda item 5, which is the UK Government Levelling Up Fund bid approval for the VALE constituency. This is the 3rd submission that we have brought forward to Cabinet for consideration, following CLWYD South and CLWYD West. For consistency in terms of the debates here at Cabinet, this is not about, at this stage, it's not about the individual projects, as these have been consulted and discussed locally by members through the MAGs from their local perspective. And I am grateful to local members for all the work they've done on this in their localities to put these projects forward for consideration by officers. From a levelling up fund perspective, Denbighshire were placed into category 1, which qualified the authority for some substantial funding. And if you're minded to support today, that will be a potential £35 million investment in Denbighshire. That funding wasn't really on the table at all in March of this year. So I will show my gratitude to officers at this stage for all the work they've done during the summer and in the autumn. And as this was a new way of working in Denbighshire, we have had to be really clear. Could you just put on mute, please? Yeah, okay. So this is a new way of working for us in Denbighshire. We've had to be clear that the process was robust, understood, with clear timelines in order that officers could proceed with some of the projects which were put forward by you as members for the bids to be put forward. So we were working to tight deadlines, late summer, early autumn. The LUF bid is about an emerging theme, and in the VALE of CLWYD, as 4.11 of the report highlights, this is town centre regeneration and environmental regeneration project. And if this scheme is successful, it will bring significant changes to the VALE of CLWYD, and particularly to the towns in the VALE. We have worked closely with the MP, James Davis, who fully supports the bid, as you can see on page 27, in its entirety, and whilst acknowledging the work that has gone into this and the potential significant impact, positive impact this will have. It is fair to say not all projects put forward were successful, but we have given assurance that officers will work with members and those communities to allocate further funding and to develop those projects to where people would like them to be in their communities. So being the fact that they haven't qualified for a Levelling Up Fund does not mean we do not support the projects, but they will be considered in the next line of funding. It's important at this stage as well to say that we continue to work with Welsh Government. The support and funding provided by Welsh Government is really important to us, but in the context of Levelling Up Fund, it's important also that now that we provide confidence to Westminster as well as Welsh Government that we can deliver on funding from both governments. And that's the only way, if that's the way it's going to work, we have to align ourselves to that, because that's the only way that our communities and residents are going to benefit by working with both governments and not playing them against each other and supporting both. So in terms of an overview on the LUF, where we're at, we met with Wrexham this week on the project board alongside the MP to discuss how we move the CLWYD South project forward. That was a positive meeting. And I've spoken to the leader of Conway this week, who assures me he's working up on the project to align Conway and Denbigshire's bid in the constituency of CLWYD West. So progress has been made on the other bids as well. And it's right that it does, because we haven't got much time to deliver on them. So hopefully today, Cabinet members, you'll be able to support this recommendation and move the VALE of CLWYD along to the process of the Levelling Up Fund. So I'll open this up now to questions, please, from Cabinet members first of all. Thank you. Bobby, please.
Just one quick question, a general question, Leader. Is there any more clarity yet on when the bids actually go in?
I think it's around springtime somewhere, or early spring is what we've been told. So in terms of clarity, not clear clarity, no, but we are working to early spring, Bobby.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Similar one, but just obviously when they're approved, how quick will the funding come in? Because obviously it is a tight time frame. So are we having them chats? So rather than just waiting, if we ask the question, because if it gets it after June, it's going to be a struggle for some of the projects. So just clarity, and are we chasing if needed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I might ask Emlyn to come in at this point to provide assurance to members of how we will be responding if this goes in today in terms of what we will be expecting from officers. Emlyn, please.
Yes, brother. Yes, we're certainly in contact with UK government officials already, We've had a recent meeting with them and are continuing with that dialogue, and we've expressed a firm view that obviously we would want confirmation from UK government on the successful bid as soon as possible, and then the funding to follow, because it all has implications, as you say, for the successful delivery of all the projects by March 2024. So we're certainly in regular communication with them, as well with obviously Steve from a finance perspective as well. So diolch.
Okay, Mark, thank you.
Yeah, just to come back just very quickly on that. So obviously it's all positive, but obviously if you lose 6 months and the programme is tight, some of the projects may need to start in good faith. So obviously that's work in progress, but thanks for that.
Yeah, just to add to that, Mark, probably there will be a test and challenge for our officers also to align themselves to deliver these bids as well, if we're successful. So to create that capacity at a local level to deliver them as well, it's probably going to be a priority for us in terms of capital investment. So we would expect officers to help us deliver on this as well. Okay, any other questions? Julian, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just first of all to endorse what's been said about the need, and I know officers are doing it, to press on a speedy resolution, A, to whether we're successful, and B, hoping that hopefully that we are, that the funding follows on pretty quickly, seeing as obviously the CLWYD South bid was successful, and that was in the first tranche, and obviously we're still at a stage where funding hasn't been received. Also from our own financial perspective, there's for the VALE of CLWYD, it's we've got a 10% match funding, which is £2 million. Steve will obviously need to know how to allocate that between different financial years. So the earlier we can get that through, the better. And I suppose one of the questions we could use is if there are some pressures on schemes that need to start, we could potentially, I suppose, use some of our match funding, which is our funding, upfront until the Welsh, the UK government funding comes through, assuming we've obviously that we've received that confirmation that it will be coming through. But that will be a matter for Steve, I'm sure, to arrange the best manner appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that, Julian. Brian? Hello, Brian. You did have your hand up, Brian. I don't know where you've gone.
No, he's gone.
Back to you, Brian.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, yeah, there's some really good projects here. I mean, it's great to see it's not just VALE, it's all across the county. So VALE of CLWYD, and we look forward to it. But obviously, there's going to be some big challenges with all the resourcing for this. But we've got the potential for something really good here. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on officers to deliver, but no doubt the team are up to it. Thank you, Leader.
Dear Tony. Okay, Brian, have you come back to us? Okay, we'll come back. So that's it from cabinet members, is it? Okay, I'll go back to other members now. Meirig, please. Meirig,
I think you're on mute. There we go. Thank you very much, respected Leader. Thank you very much for the report, and thank you to Emlyn Jones for his work progressing this. For information, have you had any bids from the rural areas? I know that you've mentioned that good things have come in from across the county. Are there any from the rural areas? Yes, Mary. did have applications and bids from rural areas going back to September, but they haven't gone through the process and ended up in this report, obviously. So there were some bids from rural areas, but haven't made it to this point. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I be parochial at the moment? I'm looking at page 25, Denby Hospital. I take it that's the former North Wales Hospital that they're referring to there. In the column cost, there's a figure of 2.75 million there. I was under the impression that the growth deal would also be providing funding towards this project. Chris, do you mind putting your screen off? We didn't get that last part. Is there some overlap here between the growth deal funding and the funding earmarked here? Or are we getting money from both sources? Thank you, Rhys. I'll ask Gareth to give the details about the two different sources. The growth bid, I'll ask Gareth to just give an explanation so that we're all clear on that. Gareth Roberts.
Okay, Emlyn, wyt ti eisiau ddod I fewn ar hwnna?
Emlyn, do you want to come in on that one? Can you explain the difference between the two sources, please? Yes, I will. I think maybe we've lost Gareth. My understanding is that they're two different sources for two different purposes. We've got the growth deal funding, which is still being discussed at the moment, but this is a different funding source for a different purpose. So that's my understanding, is it's two different sources. The growth deal is to invest in the site, to make the site more conducive for building houses on and to take some of the buildings down. This funding here, more of this is towards bringing the sites closer to the town. I remember during the discussion at the planning committee that there was a risk that this development would be on its own, and local members prefer to bring it closer to the town. So there's an element of that that's going towards active travel to get it more linked with the town. I'm not sure whether that's helpful. If Gareth returns, we can give you more detail, a more detailed response.
Chair.
Chair. That's exactly the answer I was expecting, that it was something to link the site closer to the town and not specifically on site. Thank you very much for the answer. And if Gareth does return, we'll get him to provide further detail.
Chair?
Yeah.
Sorry, just to add to what's been said on that, from my recollection, part of the funding from the Levelling Up Fund was also to bring forward the works on the properties that we were actually part of the property that we were actually looking to save, rather than it being dependent on coming further into the project when X number of houses have been delivered. So it's to bring forward that enabling development as well, I think, Chair, as well.
Yes, yes. So it's not the same, but it's a different avenue which will add to the whole project on that one. Okay, Brian, did you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, Leader, I lost connection, so I missed a couple of points. So if we can step back then when you were asking cabinet members to speak. I thought it was only right this morning that I did say a few words.
Sorry, Brian, we can't see you.
Obviously, we all need to get behind
Brian, we can't see you.
20 million
Brian, that's going nowhere. Brian, you're going to have to stop. Brian, you're going to have to stop and start again because we can't hear a word you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
Just about, but it's not very good, Brian.
Is that any better?
No. Yeah, try again in a few minutes, Brian.
No. Well, move on. I'll come back in a moment.
Yeah, try again. Okay. Is there someone else? No? Are there no other comments from members?
Right.
No
Is that any-
Cap-
Yeah, move on.
Move on. Okay, we heard that, Brian.
Yeah.
We heard the move on.
Okay.
We haven't heard anything else, I'm afraid, Brian. I think the connection is too poor today. Has he gone, is he? Okay. Okay, I'm just looking to the Chief Executive. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Graham, to the report?
No, thank you, Leader. I think that the report's pretty clear. Questions have been asked and clear answers given. Move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One last chance for Brian. He's gone, has he? Okay, no other comments or questions from anyone on the Levelling Up Fund? No? Okay, I'll come to the recommendations. 3.1, that Cabinet support the theme of the bid, the proposed projects to be included in the bid, and the broad indicative value of each project. 3.2, that Cabinet provides delegated authority to the Chief Executive Officer and Head of Planning, Public Protection and Countryside Service in consultation with the Section 151 Officer, Head of Legal, HR and Democratic Services, and the Leader to refine the projects and project costs as required, and to agree for a bid to be submitted to UK Government from Denbighshire County Council for the Vale of Clwyd constituency. I'll move that. Is there a seconder, please? Okay, so Mark Young that. Is everybody in agreement? Nobody against? Okay, that's been moved. Thank you all for your support on that one. Okay, we move on to agenda item 6, Denbigshire's Gypsy and Travel Accommodation Assessment 2021. Mark, are you going to start this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I'll do a small intro, and then I believe Councillor Mellor and then Councillor Timms are coming in. So we all know there's a legal duty under the Housing Act in Wales 2014 for all councils to undertake the new Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, and an up-to-date Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment is also a requirement for the replacement LDP, which is a critical document for land management in the county. The council is required to submit a new Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment to Welsh Government by February 2022. A project board was established to manage this piece of work, with the Leader and myself working together with senior officers to plan the approach. And taking on feedback from Community Scrutiny Committee about the early engagement of members in the process, it was agreed to establish a task and finish group to support this work and ensure compliance with the Welsh Government methodology. It was only with the endorsement of Community Scrutiny Committee that the assessment itself started at the beginning of August through to October this year. The work on the Gypsy and Travel Accommodation Assessment has now concluded and has been reviewed by both Task and Finish Group and a Community Scrutiny Committee. Before I update you on the findings of the report, I'd like to hand over to Councillor Mellor and Graham Timms to report back on the Task and Finish Group work and the committee work. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Mellor.
Thank you, Mark. As the lead member has said, the Task and Finish Group was set up with an elected member from each member area group to help with this work. The group have met 6 times in total. The group were also able to meet the consultants ORS and went on to develop a work brief and stakeholder communications and engagement plan, which we were satisfied complied with the Welsh Government methodology. The Task and Finish group also wanted there to be a good communication with elected members and also the travelling community. And local residents also were asked for some additional tasks to be included in the plans. This included an online survey for elected members and city, town and community councils to share their local knowledge with the consultants and posters to be displayed across our communities. The assessment started at the beginning of August, and we met as a group in September to review the progress. At this stage, we were satisfied that everything was being progressed in line with the work brief and stakeholder communication and engagement plan. Our final meeting was in November when we received a report on the work that had been done to complete the assessment and the final findings and recommendations. On the basis of the work undertaken, the Task and Finish group were able to report back to Community Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of December that they were satisfied with the delivery of the work brief and stakeholder communication and engagement plan previously endorsed by the Community Scrutiny Committee. They were also satisfied that Welsh Government methodology had been applied appropriately to the analysis of need. And as a group, we felt that a member Task and Finish group worked really well. We would like to see this approach used again. So I'll pass over to Councillor Graham Timms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diolch. Community Scrutiny Committee at its last meeting last Thursday, which was the 9th of December, considered the findings and the conclusions of the Task and Finish group, which was established by the committee at its meeting on the 13th of May 2021. Its aim was to support the development of the GYPSY and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, which, as you know, is a statutory requirement under the Housing Wales Act 2014. The committee established the Task and Finish group as it was keen to ensure that the council, in developing and delivering the assessment, complied with the Welsh Government's methodology on undertaking these assessments. It also wanted to make sure that in undertaking the assessment, the council would have regard to previous observations made by the Scrutiny Committee in relation to the process. An example would be making every effort to engage with the GYPSY and traveller community and other stakeholders. In July 2021, Community Scrutiny Committee considered and endorsed the work brief and stakeholder communication and engagement plan, which the Task and Finish group had developed to support the assessment's delivery. At that meeting, it was also satisfied that the approach taken by the group up until that point had been robust, and therefore we endorsed the commencement of the actual assessment process itself. At the meeting on the 9th of December last week, the Task and Finish group presented the committee with its final report. This detailed all of the work carried out by the group, information on various aspects of the work, along with the data and information analysis work they'd undertaken, all of which formed part of their quality assurance of the process followed. Having considered all the information contained in the Task and Finish group's report, along with the answers given to members' questions, Community Scrutiny Committee members were reassured that the process followed and developing and delivering the GYPSY and Traveller Accommodation Assessment complied with Welsh Government methodology and addressed all aspects raised previously by scrutiny. The committee wished to place on record its gratitude to the Task and Finish group and its chair, Barry Mellor, for its detailed and diligent work in supporting the delivery of the assessment. I know they had a pretty heavy workload over the summer and early autumn. Committee members agreed with the Task and Finish Group's views that the arrangements and processes adopted for delivering the assessment had worked well and should be considered for use in future when selecting potential sites for pitches. With the unanimous support of the Community Scrutiny Committee, I wish to advise Cabinet that scrutiny resolved, firstly, to endorse the conclusions of the Task and Finish Group, that A, the work on the GYPSY and Traveller Accommodation Assessment had met the requirements of the work brief and stakeholder communication and engagement plan as endorsed by the Committee Scrutiny Committee on the 26th of July, and the Welsh Government methodology had been applied appropriately to the analysis of need. Secondly, to confirm its support for the approach adopted for the delivery of the Denbighshire GYPSY and Travellers Accommodation Assessment as being robust and in line with the Welsh Government guidance. Thirdly, to confirm that it had read, understood and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessment, which came to us as Appendix 3 as part of its considerations. And finally, to recommend to Cabinet that the draft GYPSY and Traveller Accommodation Assessment should be approved for submission to Welsh Government. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, Graham, can I thank the three of you for that very comprehensive update and recommendations to Cabinet. And I understand, I wasn't there, that the debate in scrutiny was a very clear and concise one, and it was a good debate, and that's picked up by you there, Graham. So I appreciate the work of scrutiny and their recommendations to Cabinet, and also to you, Barry, for the work that you did with the Task and Finish Group. I think Task and Finish Groups have got a role to play within Denbighshire in terms of engaging more members in the decision-making process, and it's been led really well, and that was very clear in terms of holding everybody to account in terms of the expectations of the authority in order to deliver this. So thank you, Barry, and also to you, Mark. When I asked you to lead on this, I think your face did go a little bit pale originally, but we worked together on this through the project board, and we've had quite an awful lot of meetings in order to get this right and give a fair opportunity to all to participate. So thank the three of you for that. So I come back to you, Mark. Do you want to take
Yeah, I just want to do a summary, if that's okay, Leader. So hopefully I've got a bit more colour in me now. So I'd just like to finish off with the GTAA report has identified a need for 8 residential pitches in the county to provide accommodation for 3 families, stroke extended households. The report did not identify a need for a permanent transit site in Denbighshire at this time, but recommends a management approach to encampments. This is due to the combination of factors, including low numbers of encampments, the short-term nature of encampments, and a lack of demand for such facilities. Good practice across the UK shows that a management approach can work well, balancing the needs of travelling communities as well as those local communities. This can be designed to reflect local requirements, and both elected members and members of the travelling community could be engaged in developing how this could work in Denbighshire. And happy to go to officers and then take any questions before recommendation.
Thank you for that. Before we come to recommendations and debate, do officers want to add anything to what's been said?
No, I've got it's Emlyn here. I've got nothing to add. Thank you, Leader. It's been covered in detail. Thank you.
Okay, diolch, Emlyn. Okay, I'll open it up to questions now. Cabinet members, please.
Leader, I'm here. I can't seem to put my hand up for some reason.
Okay, Hill, yes, I can't see you, Hill, but I can hear you.
I can see you. Just a question for me. As a cabinet, we accepted this report some time ago when the stance was very clear that there was a need in Denbighshire, and we were quite committed to it at that time. And then now this report is obviously different. So Mark, if you could just explain to members what the shift is and why, just so that everyone's clear on, because when I read this report this time, obviously it gives me different information, and therefore I'm coming to a different conclusion than I did last time. So can you just explain the difference from before and now, please?
Are you referring how to the transit site?
Yeah, the transit site which was recommended that we needed one, and now we're saying we don't. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks for that, and thanks for the question, Hugh. So obviously we took a new approach which involved task and finish and scrutiny and better engagement with the travelling communities, and also across the UK where they have put in these sites, they're not used. And with communicating with the travelling community, they said they wouldn't use the facility in our authority. And as you would agree, if a certain section of our community weren't going to use the facility, I couldn't endorse that as lead member. And also good practice does show a managed approach is better. So this approach and this assessment this time, we started with a clean piece of paper. So I accept what happened last time, but it doesn't mean that delving into the detail more that we can't change our position, but the change is based on facts and good practice. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Hill.
Thank you, Mark. That's clear. So just for me to be clear in my mind and for other members, is what we're saying is we're not prepared to invest millions in a site that potentially won't be used. But
Correct.
what we're going prepared to do is continue the management, which would be a far lower cost than that of building a site.
Yeah, and obviously that's work in progress, and we're already better at it, but it's work in progress, and it'd be for members in the future to work with officers out how that looks. But it's just not a cost. There is a cost to managing it, but you're right, I wouldn't bring to this board a commitment to spending several million if the feedback is these sites aren't used by the travelling communities.
Gary, could you just help with this one,
I think
please?
I need to just remind members that the recommendation of the assessment, which was conducted by independent consultants in accordance with Welsh Government methodology, was that a transit site wasn't required. So I think it's on the basis of the assessment that's been done this time that the recommendation was that no transit site was required. Clearly, an assessment has to be done every 5 years, and circumstances will change, and that's the conclusion that the assessment has reached this time. So I don't think that we should be giving the impression that this is a purely financial consideration, because the assessment didn't say you need one, it said you don't need one.
Yeah. Okay, that's clear.
Sorry, yeah, the leader, the assessment did say that the travelling community would not use it. So I'm just saying that building a site, an investment, would be a waste of money if they're not going to use it, surely. And that's what I get out of the assessment. So I'm just basing what I'm saying on the assessment.
Well, that could be the impact of responding to the assessment, but the assessment was really clear that there was no need for transit sites on this occasion, but they didn't base that recommendation on the financial implications. That's something that's come out following that assessment. Their advice to us that there wasn't a need for a transit site. And your conclusion here might be one of the elements that comes out of that, but that's not what was in the report. The report was very clear that they were not needed. Okay. Yeah, on Hill.
Yeah. Basically, I was trying to add more meat to the bone to support the recommendation. It got lost in translations, man.
No need to do it, Hill. The recommendations are clear. Okay. Any other cabinet members' comments? No. Cabinet okay with that? Right. I'll move on to members. Peter Scott, please.
Thank you, Leader. I really just wanted to endorse your statement previously when you thanked everybody. I thought this task and finish group worked really well, and I would really like to see this task and finish group carried on when we looked for pitches and sites on the next stage. Leader, that was all, and I would thank everybody else that worked with that group. It was a very good group. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was endorsed by scrutiny as well, Peter, wasn't it? So hopefully they will continue when we move on to the next phase. But
thank you.
Barry, do you want to come back, Barry?
Yes, thanks, Leader. Just to help you out regarding managing of sites, I think we're one step ahead where we've taken on the role of a Gypsy and Traveller liaison officer now, Rachel. So I think, you know, we will be one step ahead of other counties. And as other counties have said, they have spent lots and lots of money on sites and then found that they've not been used. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Okay. Any other comments from members? Questions? No, nothing. Okay, the work's been done, I would say, hasn't it, on this one? Okay, Mark, do you want to come back with a recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The Cabinet confirms support of the approach adopted for the delivery of the Denbighshire Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment has been robust and in line with Welsh Government guidance. 3.2, that Cabinet approves draft Traveller and Gypsy Accommodation Assessment 2021 for submission to Welsh Government. 3.3, delegate authority for the lead member, planning, public protection, safer communities and domestic abuse to agree any minor changes required to the Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment prior to submission to Welsh Government. And 3.4, the Cabinet confirmed it has read and understood the taking into account the wellbeing impact assessment Appendix 3 as part of this consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That's been proposed. Is there a seconder for that? Julian, I've seen Julian. Is everybody supporting this? Is there anyone against? No, thank you, Cabinet. That's been moved. Diolch yn fawr i chi. We'll move on to agenda item 7. Welsh and Education Strategic Plan 2022 to 2032. Hill, please.
Thank you, Leader. Bore da pawb. I hope you're well. As you know, the Welsh Strategic Group has been working for many a year, and we've recently issued the consultation on the WESP. So when I refer to it as WESP, it is the Welsh in Education Group. So in case I lose you, if you know what I mean. And we have taken the situation that there's a real challenge within the Welsh language in Wales, and that the government are really focused on getting to a level where we have 1 million Welsh speakers, which is really important. So therefore, we need to work hand in hand, really, with that going forward. So I just want to, before we carry on, I just want to get the message very clearly that achieving the government target of more Welsh speakers in Wales is not purely an educational target. It is a community issue as well. So what we're saying here is the documentation, the report in front of you is talking about what we can do within education, which we can develop in the schools over the next 10 years. But also, as a council, we have a wider corporate responsibility to develop and evolve the Welsh language throughout the whole of the county. So it is a bigger picture, but this is a small part of what our focus is. So all local authorities, it's statutory for them to have a Welsh Education Strategic Plan. So there's no getting away from that. And the new plan, which is currently out of consultation, which should see us through to 2032. And every new Welsh strategic plan will follow the same guidelines and around 7 outcomes. And these outcomes obviously have to be accepted by Welsh Government, and they must reflect the learner's education journey, and they're consistent with the policy areas of Cymraeg 2050 and Education in Wales, our national mission. So just to focus on the outcomes, so I know we've got Gerrit, I think we've got Gerrit there, who obviously is the lead officer on this. So we'll be looking at achieving more nursery children in Denbighshire. 3-year-olds receive their education through the medium of Welsh. So we're trying to encourage that and increase that. We want more reception classes of children 5-year-olds to receive their education through the medium of Welsh. And that's really important. More children continue to improve their Welsh language skills when transferring from one stage of the statutory education to another. More learners study for assessed qualification in Wales as a subject and subjects through the medium of Welsh. More opportunities for learners to use Welsh in different contexts in schools. Outcome 6 is an increase in the provision of Welsh medium education for pupils with additional learning needs in accordance with the duties imposed by the Additional Learning Needs Act. So what we're saying in that area is we identify that in some areas we're not supporting through the Welsh language and additional learning needs, and we will be pushing to do so more in the future. And increase the number of teaching staff and able to teach Welsh through the medium of Welsh. And what I say that is we have a real challenge. It's a national challenge, recruitment, don't get me wrong, but we need to work locally with the local universities to try and get more people into teaching through the medium of Welsh, and then hopefully form a better relationship with recruitment for our staff going forward in Denbighshire. But also what we have identified in some areas is where we have English medium schools with a high percentage, 90% plus, of Welsh speaking staff in those schools, which could actually deliver Welsh medium education. So we will be working to identify those schools in delivering more education in Welsh for our existing pupils. And maybe the question is, maybe on some people's mind is, why aren't we not building more new Welsh schools? Well, currently in Denbighshire, we have a surplus of Welsh school places. So in some of the counties, neighbouring counties like Wrexham, for example, you'll see in their ambition that they will be building more Welsh schools, well, because they don't have that number of Welsh schools available to them, where we do have surplus places. So I think it's really important that you bear that in mind. So we will put targets in place, and that is really important. We've been set a target by Welsh Government to increase the number of Year 1 pupils receiving Welsh medium education. The lower target for Denbighshire has been set 37%, and the upper target is 41%. As of 2021, 27% of Year 1 pupils in Denbighshire access Welsh medium education. So, you know, I know it sounds a low target, but actually it's quite ambitious in where we were a few years ago. So it has increased, and we're going to continue to push it. The plan is increasing the capacity of Welsh medium schools, as I said. It's changing the language designation of schools, is a big step, and we will be consulting with all those schools when we do it. We won't be enforcing, so that people just understand, and it will be in partnership. And I think we have consulted with everyone from governing bodies, neighbouring authorities, diocese, Estyn, Welsh Language Commissioner, etc. And the consultation has ended on the 7th, and we are in the middle. It was an 8-week period. We're in the middle of pulling everything together now. And then once we've got the feedback from the consultation, we will then formulate final plans before we submit to Welsh Government, and then hopefully get a decision from them in the new year moving forward. Yeah. So that's a whistle stop, the appendixes and backing up there. That's the start, Leader. I'm happy to take questions. Gareth, add your best and we'll go back.
Yes, if that's okay. I think the fundamental change with this education strategic plan is the fact that it's a 10-year plan. Historically, because these plans have been coming before cabinets for a number of years now, where there have been 3-year plans, that it is a 10-year plan now. So it's 2022 to 2032, with key milestones along the way, of course, and the fact that Welsh governments have set as a target, set every local authority a target to achieve. Obviously, this is the strategic plan. There is and will be an underlying operational plan that goes into the sort of level of detail that is required to work with all the partners, because it is, as you've previously heard, it is something that we cannot achieve alone. You know, it is working with partners both within the local authority and outside the local authority. But again, you know, it is in line with Welsh Government policy and the current direction to reach that 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050 as well. So yeah, just you know, we're happy to take any comments or questions.
Okay, Guy, diolch i'r ddau ohonoch chi am y cyflwyniad yna.
And I thank you both for that presentation. I've got a few questions before we move on. So there's going to be consultation. How confident are you that what comes out of the consultation is going to add to what you've done to the target of 40%? Do you think that that is what's going to be the figure, or will it be higher than that following consultation, or lower? What's the link between the consultation and the target that you've set? Secondly, will there be support for parents who are non-Welsh speakers? It's great that the school environment develops the Welsh language and culture within the school, but sometimes the support isn't there outside of school. So what sort of support do you think there will be for non-Welsh speaking parents to help them with their children on this agenda? I'm very pleased that this is going to be monitored. What will be the next thing that we see as members within the county to move this strategy forward? So that's 3 questions from me to Hugh Gerrit. Thank you, Leader. First of all, can I say with regards to the target that's come from Welsh Government, so we're implementing that from them, I don't see that that'll change. Gerrit, I don't know whether you can say it because that's been set already. The only thing that might come out of the public consultation is that there might be an element of something else that we need to change. But the information is being assessed now, and by the end of this month, we will understand the responses to the consultation much better. With regards to the support provided, I think there's a slight myth here. There's a great deal of support provided to parents from the Welsh medium schools. 96% of the pupils in our largest Welsh medium school come from non-Welsh speaking homes, and the support is already there. I think we see a little bit of concern during lockdown where some parents were struggling with homeschooling, but we've put guidance in place and made sure that support is there. I think the biggest thing that we need now is to do the marketing and get rid of this myth that there is no support available. We're already working on that. We're going to be producing videos and examples of parents who have decided on Welsh medium education for their children from non-Welsh speaking families. Also, we can use the new Welsh Language Centre that's been opened at St Asaph and how that's going to work from cradle to grave. There'll be support to children, to parents, there'll be immersion support. The fact that this centre has opened is going to mean a step change for Welsh in the county. And that's going to go across the whole of the county from the south to the north. So it's really important that we do that. And sorry, the third question about the monitoring. No, I'm pleased to see that we're monitoring. What will we see next as members with regards to this strategy? Once the strategy has been submitted to Welsh Government, there will be an operational plan. I think that's the best way I can describe it, with a timeline of what's going to be done, by when, and how it's going to be measured. So that'll be the plan moving forward. Do you want to add anything, Gerrit? Yes, if I can just reiterate Hugh's words. With regards to the targets, that's a Welsh Government target. I can't see that that'll change, but it is a target, not a ceiling. So if we succeed over the next 10 years, if we exceed that target, that is what we'll try to do. We won't, after 5 years, rest on our laurels and say, we've reached the target now, job's done. We will continue, we will. With regards to the support to parents, I accept there's a large piece of work to be done here with regards to marketing in a number of ways. soft marketing and hard marketing to overcome this myth. We've started on that already. We've held meetings with the communications department to develop the website, to develop information for parents. And that's work that we're doing with partners such as Mentor Iaith, Mudiad Meithrin and so on, because everyone has got a role to play to support parents and schools as well, we've got to remember. With regards to what's happening with the next step, we have got to submit this plan to Cardiff in the new year by the end of January. They will then come back either approving the plan, rejecting it, or proposing suggestions for improvements or development of the plan. So that'll be the next step. We are in discussions with them on a constant basis. So before that happens, we will have discussed this thoroughly with Welsh Government and we'll know what's what. Once it's come back from Welsh Government and has received approval, then it's implementation of the 10-year plan. That's the next step. We will be reporting back to the Welsh strategic group that meets to monitor the development. So that'll be the next step. Thank you for the responses. Any other cabinet members? No other cabinet members. Okay. Other members? Mary, please. Thank you, respected leader. Thank you very much for the presentation in English, the opening presentation and introduction. Can I thank the head of education for sending me a Welsh copy via email this morning instead of the English one that's attached as an appendix to the report, the Welsh report. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Right, I was on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Arwell, would you like to come in? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Leader, can I thank you for the vision that we've got here through Gerrington Hill. Gerrington's worked hard on this with his staff. Thank you very much. A few questions. What about Cymraeg Campus? That scheme seems to have been forgotten, maybe because of the pandemic. And I'll read it out in English. The existing Welsh and Education Strategic Group will merge with the Council's Language Forum at the end of 2021 in order to oversee the plan's implementation and evaluation. Why does this need to be done? Because the meeting to discuss Welsh outside of education is ignored and we haven't met very often. I would like more details why you've decided to do this. Thank you. Hewa Geraint, would you like to respond to that, please? With regards to Cymraeg Campus, it hasn't been forgotten. Our schools, our English medium schools are still committed to developing the Cymraeg Campus scheme and are now working on the next steps, going from the Bronze Award to achieving the Silver Award and ultimately the Gold Award. Maybe the focus due to other pressures has gone slightly off, but it's certainly something that's on the schools' agendas to be developed. With regards to your second question about merging the Welsh and Education Strategic Group with the Council's Language Forum, we discussed this nationally with Welsh Government and they proposed suggestions of national good practice We always talk about learning lessons and looking externally rather than just looking inwards all the time. And they suggested a few authorities where they, who have got representatives in each of these meetings, had recognised good practice, and they shared that nationally. There were plans we were meant to introduce in February, March 2020 to see the good practice, but unfortunately weren't able to visit. But we have been discussing with different authorities, and the feeling was that in general, because we are saying that it's not just education that will develop the number of Welsh speakers. In general, it's the same people sitting around the language forum group and the Welsh in Education strategic group. So it's the same people in the same place. Rather than merging, the intention is to have part one focusing on the educational side and part two of the meeting focusing on the work of the language forum and the language partners, because it's the same people. We will be singing from the same hymn sheets, and we will be able to have a more joined up method of working and implementing this, rather than not that one undermines the other. The intention is that they enhance each other and strengthen the other's work. That's the intention. The first meeting will be held in January. So that's the intention, not to undermine anything, to strengthen the vision so that we can develop what we've already got in place, having looked at other good practice. Can I ask a question before Hugh comes back in? Why have you said that you're going to have an independent chair? Again, that comes from discussions nationally. What they felt, because at the moment, in our Welsh in Education strategic group, school head teacher chairs, and that head teacher sometimes has an opinion, and as a chair is trying to list everybody else's opinion. In other authorities where good practice has been identified on a national basis, they did feel that having an independent chair enhanced the way of steering and leading the meetings, and that it was very effective. So there hasn't been any appointment, but it's something that we are looking at and taking into consideration, having listened to the voices of external bodies who tell us how effective it has been to have an independent chair who leads the group and gives everybody else an opportunity to express their opinion. That's the thinking behind that. I think maybe there's room for further discussion about that decision. I don't think it's totally necessary to do that. It's something that the Welsh Government thinks maybe we should. No, it's not statutory. It's something for us to weigh up and measure. Okay, if we can have a further discussion on that, maybe Arwell, moving forward. Can I come in, Mr. Chairman, on that point? I think that there's a conversation to be had around that, but I also think that we need to remember that many external people sit on the WESP at the moment, such as Mudiad Meithrin, Mentor Iaith, Welsh Governments. So maybe having an independent chair will be more advantageous. So if a decision is made by the group, it's not the council leading it, because we're working together collaboratively. So there's two sides to the story. I think we need further discussion about this, and I think we should have that conversation in the meetings.
Did you want to come in at this point, please?
If I may. just listening to the discussion and other discussions I've had with Geraint over the last couple of weeks regarding this. I mean, as has already been said, the need and desire to promote the Welsh language and culture is more than just an educational issue. I think that's clear. And I think we as a council can probably do more to promote the use of Welsh language in our day-to-day business as an organisation with our staff. And actually the council has obviously a role to play in leading and facilitating the promotion of Welsh language and culture in our wider communities as well. And I think we can do more in that regard. And I've listened to this discussion with interest. So we probably need to, I want to get involved in that. I think we can assess our overall corporate approach. And I'm thinking a one council approach. So why education will be involved, but I want all our managers and all our staff to be involved in this, a one council approach, looking at best practice. And as chief exec, it's something I want to get involved in and provide some leadership on as well. So I listened to the debate. I know today is about the Welsh in education, but I think this is taking us into a bigger discussion as well. And I'll want to be involved and provide some leadership in that, leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. That's very assuring to see that you want to be more involved in this element of it. And I think you're right. This is Welsh education, a strategic plan, but there is a bigger picture, of course. Take that on board. Okay, diolch am hwnna.
Thank you very much. Can I come in?
Graham, can I welcome, as lead member, can I welcome your comments to the commitment of the Welsh language? Because as members will remember, back in the Nova at the start of this council, I did ask that we could have the Welsh language as a corporate priority, and I think the agreement was given that it would be through the spine of all priorities. But I think, given the ambition, Graham, of the target that we have to achieve, I would like to see that I may not be here in the next council, but I suppose as a plea now is that I would love to see that the Welsh language is given its own corporate priority going forward in the next council. So please, that's a plea from me as lead member. Thank you.
Diolch am hwnna. Thank you for the plea.
Thank you for that. Gwyneth Ellis, please. Thank you, leader. I've got two questions. I'll keep it concise. Gwyneth, we can't hear you very well. With regards to 5-year-olds, they're 27% in Welsh medium education, 23% of 3-year-olds. But in the targets, those ages go up to 32%. So that means that 3-year-olds are going to increase from 7%, but only a 5% increase for 5-year-olds. Is there a lack of ambition there? That is, if we're going to increase the percentage of 3-year-olds, I would expect the percentage of 5-year-olds to increase by at least the same percentage. So is that a lack of ambition with regards to the 5-year-olds? That's my first question. My second question is about the comments about secondary education in the south of the county and the schools in Rhuthun and Llangollen. And what implications will that have? There's no mention of the children from the Corwen, Llanrwyllt and CLWYD area who currently go to the high school in Bala. And will there be any implications for those families who traditionally send their children to the secondary school in Bala? Are there any implications to that from this report? I think we've got you back. I think I'll check with Geraint whether he got all the questions and he can respond. Thank you, Gwyneth. With regards to your first question, Carwyn, who is on the meeting, he's been analysing the data and working on the data. So I think Carwyn can give a better explanation than me because he's lived his way through creating and analysing the data. Carwyn, can you respond to the question on the data, and I'll come back on the question about secondary schools? No problem at all. If I've heard it correctly, and apologies if I didn't hear it correctly. With regards to the difference in the preschool age data to the data about school age 5-year-old, the provision varies widely in the county, and not all children attend preschool, so they're not included in the data. We have no control over which language they choose in the preschool settings. What we're trying to do here, because we're looking forward, we're trying to model so that the pyramid increases at the bottom, so that there are more children feeding into our schools who've had a head start in Welsh, remembering as well that there is capacity. There's a limit to the capacity of the preschool provision at the moment as well. I'm quite happy to go through all the data in more detail with you if you wish, but that's why there's a variance. Apologies if I'm not answering your question correctly. I only heard the last part of the question. Thank you, Karen. What I wanted to know was why there's more ambition with regards to the 3-year-olds rather than the 5-year-olds. If there's a 9% increase for the 3-year-olds, why isn't it reflected for the 5-year-olds? That is, if we did that, we could be even more ambitious. With regards to that, what I've tried to indicate is that there is going to be some lag in 2028. If we've got 22% having Welsh medium education in the preschool settings, it's going to take them 2 years to get to year 1, because they go into nursery, then reception, then go into year 1. So the percentage should increase 2 years later every time. Obviously, there is no perfect method for forecasting this, because obviously it's dependent on how we're able to increase the provision in our schools, because there is an obvious capacity limit on our provision. We've only got a certain number of places in our Welsh medium schools. So that's why there are other elements of the plan that will mitigate some of those challenges during the 10-year period. Leader, can I come in, please? Just to put it simply, Gwyneth, it's quite easy for us to flick a switch at the moment and open a new Midyd Meithrin Cylch in Ysgol Dewi Sant in Rhyl, and there'll be one opened in the new centre in St Elzef, and they'll be operational straight away. But they've got to be fed in to age 5. That's why there's some time lag. And what we will have to do is, after 5 years, we'll have to work with the schools and consultation. So there's a little bit more challenge. It's not that we're not being ambitious, we're just looking at how we can achieve this in reality. It's easier for us to work with Midyd Meithrin than change things so quickly for the 5-year-olds. Geraint, with regards to the second question about families who wish to choose Ysgol y Berwyn, and some in the south of the county choose to go to Ysgol CLWYD. There are complexities here because we're coming into the admissions policies of different authorities and the learner travel measure with regards to school transport. We acknowledge that this is a matter that needs a great deal of attention and needs a great deal of scrutiny in order to really get to understand the detail of this, to ensure that we make the correct choices to develop Welsh in every area, and also for the parents as well, so it's the best choice available for them. So it is a complex matter which crosses all sorts of other strategies and policies. but the assurance is there, and it is definitely something that we will be looking at in detail. And we'll also discuss with the schools and with local members, because it's something that does require a great deal of attention. Thank you for that, Emrys. Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you to ask Graham Timms to come in first to give the translator a break?
Graham Timms, please.
Diolch, I wasn't expecting that. Thanks for that, Emrys.
Thank you, Leader.
Just coming onto a matter that Hugh very briefly touched on, and that is about teacher education, because no matter what plans we do as a county, it all relies on getting a good supply of really good teachers that can speak Welsh in order to be able to teach in the language. And that has been one of the continual challenges in the south of the county, and it's called Dinas Bran, to recruit teachers who can teach through both the medium of English and in Welsh. And my question is, I understand it's Welsh Government and that is going to have the main say on this, and teacher training colleges, universities and so on. However, is there anything more that the county can do in its Welsh education plan to stimulate new teachers coming forward and to help them and support them in their learning? Can we go the extra mile? Because without teachers, we're sunk. Diolch.
Thanks, Graham, for that. Geraint?
The quick answer is yes. There is more we can do. Obviously, when we've been talking about, we can't do this in isolation, there's a partnership going on here. It is a partnership with universities as well, because we need to generate more staff who are able to teach the medium of Welsh coming through the system. As well. We have got a partnership ongoing with Bangor University, and it's the Cwrs Sabothol, the sabbatical courses for currently serving teachers who may have some understanding of Welsh, but they want to further develop their Welsh so they can develop it within their schools. And that is very well attended by Denbighshire schools. It's held in our centre in St Asaph, in partnership with, it's run by Bangor University, and we do get quite a few numbers that do attend that every year. So we are building gradually, but that is not the holy grail that's going to solve all the sort of personnel and staffing issues. We do an annual review as well. There's a SWAC, a school workforce annual census, that is held every year, and one of the questions is looking at the linguistic capabilities of staff across the board. So we have got data where we can see where the needs are greater so that we can target. And we also run courses with schools to support them in developing their staff, and also working regionally with the regional service GWE to offer staff the additional support. But this is one of the most challenging outcomes, is the staffing issue and developing the workforce, and it is not something that's going to happen overnight. It is a sort of a longer term, but we are in constant discussions, and obviously there is also a marketing piece of work to be done locally, but also nationally, to drive this sort of beast of an outcome towards a conclusion. So it's really challenging, but we have got irons in the fire, shall we say? Okay,
Graham, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it also supports the ambitions to provide a future for our young people, doesn't it? An opportunity to work and live through the medium of Welsh. So I'd appreciate whatever you can do on that to stimulate the flow of teachers still.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Graham. Okay, Emrys.
Thank you, Chairman. Do I need to declare an interest as a governor of Ysgol Brenhyfryd and Ysgol Borthyn? I'd like to take advice from Gary on that, please. I'm just looking at Gary. Declaration of interest as a governor at Ysgol Brenhyfryd and Ysgol Borthyn. It won't do any harm to declare a personal interest, but it won't be a prejudicial interest. Okay, I declare a personal interest then, because this plan doesn't look at schools individually. There is reference to Ysgol Brenhyfryd in it. However, I declare a personal interest, therefore. Can I also say that I welcome the vision in this report, which wishes to see a substantial increase over a number of years in the number of Welsh speakers by 2032, and hopefully to reach the target of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. However, I'm going to concentrate on 4 aspects. I'm going to look at what isn't in the report. If I can draw your attention quickly, the word promotion, it's we will promote, it says a number of times in the report. And the immersion centre will be promoted and so on. We need the details. How will this promotion occur? What exactly will happen in order to ensure that parents see that there are opportunities for their children to learn Welsh as they move into the area from outside of Wales, possibly, and maybe don't have the awareness of people already living in the community. So that's one question. How are we going to do the promotion? I think we need a bit more meat on the bone with regards to that. The immersion centres, we've got 1 immersion centre in St Asaph at the moment. There's reference in the report to having satellite centres. If you have an imaginary line and using Denby as your centre, travelling to St Asaph from Ruthin, or especially from Llangollen, isn't as easy. So we need to see other centres in the south of the county. There are 2 empty schools in CLWYD and Llandrillo, 2 empty school buildings. I don't know what the status of those are. I think they're still owned by Denbighshire County Council. Also, there are empty spaces in some schools that could host an immersion centre. So I'm asking that you consider satellite locations for immersion provision, because it's so important that we get these new speakers so that they contribute to the 1 million Welsh speakers ultimately. I also want to refer to the Welsh medium continuum from nursery to primary to secondary. There's no mention about the 6th form or the post-16. If I live in Llanrhaeadr, I can go to the most suitable Welsh medium school for my needs, and a number choose Ysgol Brenhyfryd as that school, and other parents or pupils choose Ysgol CLWYD. In Ysgol CLWYD, you'll get everything through the medium of Welsh up until 6th form. Hopefully this will also be available in Ysgol Brenhyfryd by 2022. But what about beyond Key Stage 4? In 2005, when I was an union official, there was a great deal of discussion about the continuum when they were taking 6th forms out of some schools, and they wanted to see the continuum continuing into colleges. I don't think that's happened as well as had been hoped at that time. And I think that any parent, wherever they live, if they want their children to have a Welsh medium education up until Key Stage 4 and beyond, then transport should be available for those pupils free who wish to get to those schools that provide that. Would it be possible, please, for us to link this strategy when it becomes the official approved strategy, that it's also part of the local development plan? There will be a large number of new housing developed. That should be a consideration as we develop our new local development plan. I think I've referred to everything I wish to raise. I think there's more than enough there, Iris. Thank you. More than enough. I'll ask Geraint to respond, first of all, to those questions. One at the end, if I may, please, Chair. Can I come in first and Ger come up here? Just to say, this is the strategy. So the meat on the bone will come in the next document, where we'll be explaining how we're going to implement this strategy. As Geraint and myself have mentioned, and I think it's important to make this point, at the moment, immersion happens in one school, CLWYD, and it's very successful with the immersion scheme at that school. What we're looking at is to offer that across the county, but before we can increase the provision, we've got to make sure that there's transport for those children to come to the centre in St Asaph for the immersion provision. And what will happen from next year if there are schools with Welsh needs in their schools and the head teachers tell us that there is a problem, then the immersion staff working the centre will be able to go out to those schools to support them. So it'll be like using Dyfal, but you will get more detail in the action plan. With regards to the continuum and the sixth form, I think that we've seen a shift when schools started operating together to try and offer provision altogether, but they've withdrawn from that now, and you know that Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd has done that. But the head teacher of Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd has had a conversation with me, and he said that everybody will have the same opportunities in Welsh as they do in Ysgol CLWYD, and I'm really pleased to hear that and totally supportive of that. So I think there will be some impact when the school categorisations, and Gwyneth touched on the situation in Llangollen and Bryn Hyfryd. I think it'll be interesting what comes out of Welsh Government with regards to how they're going to support schools in the future and the categorisations. And I hope it comes hand in hand with any changes to the school transport policy. I think we're the only county left who still pays for school transport for sixth formers. So it's important to remember that Denbighshire pupils are in a good place compared to other counties across North Wales. You're making me work this morning, Emrys, but I hope that I've covered everything. But as ever, Geraint can come in and mop up anything I've missed. Thank you very much. Yes, you're correct that the word to promote and promotion is in the strategic plan, because we are promoting, we can't enforce because it's parental choice at the end of the day. And as the lead member said, and we have started on this process, on the marketing plan that's going to go hand in hand with the strategic plan to do this promotion. And it's not just online marketing, but more visible marketing and more hard marketing as well, in order to promote with schools and all our partners. With regards to the immersion centre, we do acknowledge in the plan the need to look at the viability of the immersion provision in the south of the county, because I acknowledge it is far to go from Llangollen to get to St Adolf by 9 o'clock in the morning for a 5, 6 or 7-year-old child. So in the document, it says that we will look at having a viability survey with regards to that. With regards to the secondary schools and the Welsh language continuum, the statutory document on categorisation, the new categorisation of schools. The last I heard, that is to be published before Christmas. Whether it will or not is another issue. But there will be a new document about categorisation, which will mean that we will need to have more discussion. Geraint, could you put your screen off? We lost you slightly at the end there.
Sorry.
Apologies. Emrys, did you have one further question? Yes, I do. A small one, Emrys. Yes, it's quite small. To be honest, who has referred to it quickly, there are possibilities. There are possibilities of using teachers to help. We've lost our team of Athrawon Bro, the Welsh advisory teachers. So we've lost that team. We're down to one person now, and it's a really large task for one person. I'd like to encourage that we link in with the sabbatical scheme. My own wife has taken advantage of it in the past, and it's so valuable to give confidence to teachers. But it's great that they're able to then turn to a team of people who can help. And I'm appealing, please, will the county please consider reintroducing Athrawon Bro, a team of Welsh advisory teachers, as they were until fairly recently, because they did excellent work and they were having outstanding results in our primary schools. And I think that goes hand to hand. I've got one more comment, but I'll keep that for now. I think as the strategy develops and the pressure increases to move it forward, I think we will have to look at the resources to progress this. And maybe that's one of the things that we will have to consider. I don't know whether there are any short-term plans. I'm looking towards Hugh or Geraint to respond on that. Can I come in, just to be clear, the way that Emrys makes it sound that we've got rid of Welsh language advisory teachers and we haven't invested. The reason why we've only got one is that the funding that paid for them was invested in the school, and it was the school's choices to do that by investing in the schools. The input from the head teachers was that they preferred to provide the Welsh support and pay for it themselves in the schools rather than having Athrawon Bro dropping in now. This has been in place for a number of years before I took the lead on Welsh in the county. And every time that we've looked at it again, the head teachers are very supportive of this formula and they agree with it. There are additional resources with regards to immersion, and that will increase. But once the plan has been improved and then we can weigh measure what investment is required, we will come back to the council to look at what investment is required in order to make sure we reach our targets. The challenge is massive and there's a great deal of work to be done before we can move ahead with this. Thank you, Hugh. No further questions? Can I just say that this is a very interesting subject and very important, and I think it's wider than just education, as the Chief Executive said earlier. Can I ask Hugh if you would consider having a workshop for the councils, if not during this term of office for this council, if we can put it in the forward work plan as a workshop for the next council. A great deal of comments that have been raised today, that not always an easy answer to them, and we're not going to get the easy answer until we have a better understanding of what the strategy looks like. So if you could consider having it in the forward work plan as a workshop for us as a council or for the new term. What do you want me to put in? Sorry, I missed a bit there. Would you consider this to be held as a workshop for councillors at the end of this council or for the next new council? I think it'll have to be in the next council term, I would think. We would have more meat on the bone for people to be able to understand exactly what we're doing. It's okay to have the goals and the target, but we need to explain how we do it. And it would be important for councillors to discuss that. Okay, I'll leave it up to you as to when is the most appropriate time. So I think we need to have a workshop for the councillors to have an internal discussion about, so that they gain a better understanding. Can you come to the recommendations, please, Chair? I think Councillor Emerson wants to come back in. Yes, sorry, I just wanted to correct what Councillor Hill-Roberts has said. I haven't talked about getting rid or cutting costs. I mentioned losing the team of Athrawon Pro. I didn't say anything like that. It's not that we've got rid of, we have lost members of our Athrawon Pro team, and I'm asking for them to be for that team to be reinstated. Thank you all very much for the discussion. It's been very interesting. Recommendations. I've got the paper in front of me in English, so apologies, Councillor Davis.
Education strategic plan.
Is there a seconder from the cabinet, please? I'll second it. Is everybody in agreement with the recommendations? Anyone against? Okay, that's been passed. Thank you very much, Hugh. Can we we'll take a 10-minute break. So if we come back at 10 to 12, please.
All cabinet members refreshed and ready to go, second half? Yeah. Okay, I don't think Brian is with us for agenda item 8, is he?
Hugh, do you want me?
He's asked me to take it over, if that's okay, Leader.
Okay, we'll have a collective approach to this. Thanks, Tony. Between Tony, Julian, and a little bit myself, we'll get it through and land it in Dave Laurie's lap, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Are you with us, Dave?
I am, yes.
Good, thank goodness for that. Okay, agenda item 8, proposed minimum standard for Denbighshire County Council, non-domestic new build and major extension refurbishment construction projects, which includes targets for in-use and embodied carbon. And this is one of the, I was going to say something we had to react, but something we have got to do differently as a consequence of our climate change agenda and our targets for carbon emissions, and for us to understand the how the implementation of new projects has to work from now on, following our statements on emergency. So that's the basic of the reports. I'll pass it on to you now, Tony, and then ask Julian to come in after if need be. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah. So due to Brian's lack of connectivity, just the report, just briefly, it sets out the proposed minimum standard to which all Denbighshire County Council non-domestic new build and major extension stroke refurbishment construction projects must adhere to, which includes targets for in-use and embodied carbon. That's the intro. So Julian, did you want to add anything before we go to Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Just a few points to make. This obviously is one of the planks within our attempts to achieve our carbon zero by 2030 agenda, following on from the climate change emergency declaration. We have been, generally speaking, trying to put quite an effort into improving our existing building stock. And the proposals in this paper would be to utilise the UK Green Building Council definitions to take us forward on those projects which are ahead of us. There's in the appendices, there is an indicative timeline as to how we would phase in and what type of properties we would intend utilising for that, but it would be very much an incremental approach because clearly there are some schemes that are already on the pathway and we wouldn't be able to accommodate those at the moment. There can be no doubt that if we take a whole of life costing for these projects, taking this forward in this manner will deliver savings in the long term in terms of improved running costs, improved maintenance costs, and of course improvements to our environmental impact. Clearly, though, there is an increase in the upfront capital costs resulting from that. And again, you'll see some indicative examples in some of the appendices where it's approximately around about a 20% uplift that we're anticipating in those costs. Whilst it should be said that Welsh Government have made a recent announcement about school buildings, it will probably be only a short matter of time before they make similar announcements about all of their funded schemes. And clearly, it's always more costly to retrofit a building than to actually do it from the commencement. So it makes sense for us to get this implemented as soon as we can. We need to take advantage of any and all pilot funding that's available from Welsh Government, but I think we do have to accept that eventually the cost of doing this initially will fall on the authority. So we just need to make sure that when we're planning for projects in the future, that we make sure that we're accommodating the full costings for this. But I would certainly endorse and support the recommendations within the report. I will hand over to either Dave or Alan if they want to add anything to that. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll go to any questions members may have.
Okay, can I thank you both for that introduction. Before I come to the officers, I'd just like to add to that we're all familiar with the risks of not doing this. Probably we should be asking for more detailed information about the risks of doing it in terms of increased costs, which you alluded to there, Julian, which could be quite substantial, but there's a long-term gain we're familiar with. And also the second bullet point of staff resource to deliver this agenda as it becomes more of the norm in terms of our working ways. So if Alan or Dave could cover those two in their responses as well, please. Okay, is it Alan or Dave who's going to come in?
I think Dave will pick up the detail. I'll certainly back him up if he needs anything.
Okay.
Leader.
Good leading from the front there, Alan.
Dave Lowry, please.
Yep. Okay. Yes. Thanks for that introduction. I think Julian hit most of the salient points. To be honest with you, yes, it's something. It's part of our decarbonisation agenda. It's something we have to do if we're going to be net zero carbon. There's no point in us building new buildings now that are going to give us a problem later. Yes, there is an anticipated additional cost. This has been based on an uplift in construction cost, which again is based on some Welsh Government not so much guidance, but figures that they put out for pilot schemes within education, which stated an anticipated increase of build cost of £350 per square metre. I think on top of that, we've also anticipated that there will be additional costs for professional consultants, because we are now intending to measure embodied carbon. So how much carbon a building material has taken to produce. We're anticipating that, and not just measuring it, I must say, but monitoring how we're anticipating that we'll hit the target of 800 kilograms of carbon per metre squared of embodied carbon in the materials. That is not a whole new, but certainly a variation on the sort of QS role, where instead of measuring how much a material costs in monetary terms, we're going to be measuring it in terms of what it costs in carbon. And that really, the design and construction team have put together some anticipated increases in professional fee costs, and that whole then has been put forward as it's actually 19%, but as Julian said, it's circa 20%, I think, 1% between friends. So yeah, it is an anticipated cost. I think with any construction project, it's quite difficult to try and anticipate what exact costs are going to be, even when you have an idea what the building is, where it is, how big it's going to be, that sort of thing. We're always trying to anticipate increased costs in terms of new regulation, which I think, as Julian said, this measure or measures like it will become in the very near future. I think this will become the norm. Other regulations, material costs, labour costs. So I think there's always a risk, I think, when we're anticipating the cost of buildings. But I think this is something that as an authority we do particularly well, as an industry that we do quite well in terms of monitoring costs through QSs, through the 3 stages we have for client sign-off. So yeah, I think there is a risk. There's a risk that we may have underestimated. There's a risk that we may have overestimated, but it's certainly something that we can manage within that process. So yeah, I'll be quiet now.
Okay.
Sorry, was there another point, Leader, that you made? Not so much. Oh, resources was the other point.
Resource, yes.
And again, yes, I think resource in terms of expertise may be an issue going forward. I think that the whole decarbonisation agenda is something that is gathering, well, not so much gathering pace. I think it's hit us with pace. But again, I think that's something that we will manage through the skill sets we already have in-house, the skill sets we have in our consultants. And we're already finding that both consultants and contractors and our own staff are responding quite well to this. And we found that through some of the retrofit programs that we're doing. So again, it's always a risk, but I think it's something that we can manage. And I think the other side of that is it's a real opportunity in terms of growing knowledge, skills, and jobs, really.
Okay, thank you, Dave, for that answer. Questions from cabinet members?
Sorry, Leader, can I just follow up with that? Would you mind?
Yes, Alan.
Thank you. Just to say, Dave, as an expert in this field, has focused on the technical details, which I think you'll find very reassuring. And I think it's great to hear that just that pragmatic attitude to this. But I think it's also worth saying that this is a big step for the council, but it's a great step forward. And Dave says, I think it just means we're going to be slightly ahead of the curve with this, with all the advantages that brings in terms of and so on. And it reflects very much our commitment to climate change and actually doing something about it. this is a really important change, and I think it's one that, as members, we should be proud of, that we're even considering doing this sort of thing, because it's exactly what everybody will have to do. But we're in a sense will be leading the way in Wales with this, so it's really very, very positive, reputationally and in practical sense. And Dave's right. Industry is gearing up very quickly to working in this way. We will be doing that too. And in terms of the climate change programme, we've identified it as an area of growth for us in terms of green skills, the skills to build like this and so on. So Dave's right, we'll be ahead of the game for that. But I think it's something that as a council we should be proud of, that we're taking a lead in this and actually showing others how it can be done. So
thank you for that.
That's the other side of it, Leader.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'll just drop my hand. So obviously this is positive, and it's just been said we're going to be one of the first taking this approach. Just a couple of statements and questions. So Dave, when we say 20% extra cost, does that include the material increase, or is that just the cost of being greener? But I do want to make the point that when you build contaminated land, bad land is a risk. So to me, it's just another risk. So you'll win some, you'll lose some. But can you just talk on the 20%? Is that just to go greener, or is it materials? And I'd like to make the point, if you read all the guidance on this, that 20% is going to come down as we all start doing it more, and the cost comes down, you get volume. And then one for Alan, staff is down as a risk. But I think if we're the first, we're green, we're exciting to work for, I hope people want to work for us, Alan. So
Mark,
I think that's a positive.
Mark, could you just switch your screen off, please? It
Yeah,
wasn't...
sorry, yeah, okay. What bit did you miss? Sorry.
Just the last couple of sentences.
Yeah. So the 20%, is that materials, or is that just to go greener? I make the point that that will come down as we get volume and everyone starts building like this. Alan, on the staff, it is a risk that we haven't got the skills, but I think if we're the first and we're the greenest, it's exciting and people will want to work for Denbighshire. So I think that's a positive for us. And lastly, any feedback off developers on this approach? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Dave?
Yeah, firstly, I think you're right. The cost will come down as volume increases via demand. The 20%, that's an increased cost which encompasses materials, labour, design, professional fees, but just for for meeting the enhanced standard. So it's not a generalisation in terms of material costs generally. And I think the other point you made on the resources is you're right. Certainly our internal staff are very keen and very excited to drive this agenda. I think in some ways they sort of feel that the shackles have been taken off a little bit, which is a good thing. And again, industry, yes, we're obviously dealing with contractors, consultants, and again, the response is very positive. I think everyone agrees and recognises that this is the way forward. And like I say, I think it's been introduced very quickly. I think the industry is responding as quickly as it can, certainly, and more importantly, I think not so much responding as quickly as it can, but with enthusiasm.
Okay, thank you, Dave, for that. Any other questions? Mark, do you want to come back on that? Are you okay with that?
If I can just come back, I mean, I'll be supporting this, and I'm very proud of having that debate. It means we're in front and we mean it, and it's exciting. And as I say, as a cabinet member, I'm proud that we're debating it today. It's fantastic.
And can I just respond as well, please, Leader? Would you mind?
Yes.
Just on the 20%, it is within the paper, but it might not be obvious, is that it's essentially an increase in upfront costs, and that whole life costing is not more expensive. So we don't anticipate, it's a question of putting more money in at the beginning rather than money which is lost. And in terms of skills, Mark should be reassured. We're doing some work on another project. Some of you will be familiar with the archive project. We've recently had some work done by a private company on on that particular project, and they've been able to work. They had the expertise to work in terms of net carbon zero, but also passive house standards. So that's an expertise definitely is growing and developing in private industry as well as within our own organisation. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, Graham, would you like to come in now, please?
Thank you, Leader Dale. Just a brief comment. I mean, we talk about additional costs now because this is something new, but I guess in a couple of years' time, we won't be talking about additional costs. This will just be the way that we actually need to do things. And then we won't be talking about additional costs. It will just be the things that we deliver in the way that we've been delivering things in the past, and we haven't talked about additional costs. It's only because it's new, but ultimately we've got to do it. We won't be considering additional costs. It's the right thing to do. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Graham, for that. Any questions from cabinet members?
There was one outstanding question. I just said any feedback off developers who do this sort of work for us. David, please.
Dave?
Sorry, yeah. Not so much feedback. I think where we are with the new build programs, I think it is just that acceptance and enthusiasm. And obviously, as developers and builders, they see the opportunities as much as we do.
And I think, Chair, if I can just add, we do have a very good relationship with our contractors and locally through the work that we've been doing over the past several years with the North Wales Construction Framework, which we operate on behalf of North Wales authorities. So I think it's building upon a structure and a relationship that's already there.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Julian. Any questions from cabinet members? No. Okay. Meirig, please.
Thank you once again, respected leader. 2 questions, if I may. Are the listed buildings exempted? Do we have to comply, or are we doing this because it's a good thing to do with regards to carbon? I was thinking about CLWYD in particular. The second question, there's reference to the materials and the carbon produced. I take it that purchasing materials from 200 miles away, even though they're cheaper than using local materials with a higher cost because you're buying locally. I was listening to the chief executive speaking, saying that there won't be additional cost, but if you buy locally, but it's available cheaper in London, for example, I take it that we will be purchasing locally from now on and not from further afield. Thank you, Meirig.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the materials, we always try and buy locally anyway. I think with the embodied carbon, I think not that a lot will depend, but a lot of consideration has to be given to how much embodied carbon is within that material and how local better options are. I mean, the obvious thing is timber. You know, you'd like to build with as much timber as you can. The availability of that locally is something that may not suit the volumes that we require, but I think again, it's promoting those opportunities for those particular materials to be produced locally. So it's a bit like when you mentioned, you know, it may be cheaper to buy something from further away. In monetary terms, it might be better for us to get certain materials from further away because there is less embodied carbon. And I appreciate there's a balance to be had around the transport costs. But that's it's a bit of a change of mindset, really, moving away from monetary cost and looking more at carbon cost. And the other question was around, sorry, it slipped my mind.
Lle di just mynd nôl at y cwestiwn arall?
Can you
Mary?
just go back to the listed buildings?
Oh, yes. The buildings that are provided in the appendix, they're projects that are in the pipeline now. It will depend largely where they are. What we've said is that we would like to apply this standard to anything that is in RIBA stage 3. So that's spatial design. We haven't quite hit the detailed technical design yet. I think in fairness, when we've been talking about this with services, we have to accept that there may be some of those projects that we have to take a bit of a pragmatic approach with, because it may be on the cusp of moving into stage 4, or it may be that stage 3 means that costs have been developed a little bit further based on our standard approach now. But that will be project specific. I think in terms of some of the buildings that we're looking at, there may be technical issues that mean we just simply can't do what we want to do. But that shouldn't detract from the fact that we want to do it and we will do what we can to achieve it.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much. Just to add to your first question, I think that this agenda, that the word local is very important. And it's something that we will have to take the opportunity to develop over the forthcoming years to deal with the climate change agenda. I think there are major opportunities here for local companies to adapt to fulfill this. So there'll be great opportunities from this. So I do agree with your first question, and thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Leader. Because what I was thinking about, if you go for new slates to do some work, they're much cheaper from China and from Spain than they are from quarries in Gwynedd, and that's very sad. Thank you for that.
No more questions? Okay, I'll just go through the recommendations then. 3.1, that Cabinet agreed to the adoption and implementation of a DCC construction standard for non-domestic new build and major extension, refurbishments, construction projects to meet in use and embodied carbon targets. 3.2, that the implementation of this standard must be done in a way that is compatible to the Council's ecologically positive by 2030 goal. And 3.3, that the committee confirms that it has read, understood, and taken account of the Wellbeing Impact Assessment Appendix 1 as part of its consideration. Could someone move that, please?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Julian's moved that. Tony seconded it. Everybody happy? Nobody's against that, are they? Okay, thank you for that. Right, we'll come to agenda item 9, the establishment of the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee. This report is about supporting, in principle, clarity of the role of CJCs in relation to the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. The CJCs were established as part of the Local Government Act and will start functioning in North Wales on the 30th of June 2022. We also need to set the budget by January the 31st. Its other core functions will be a strategic development plan for the region and the regional transport plan. The region already has a well-established growth deal through the Economic Ambition Board, and as North Wales leaders, we did raise concerns regarding losing identity and brand, which by now is well established not only in the region but in the whole of Wales and the UK as a whole. Welsh Government have acknowledged this issue and have agreed to develop a framework that allows the Economic Ambition Board to be transferred by way of delegation to the relative executive functions of the CJC as in recommendation 1. And I will ask Gary to update you in more detail on that. We did bring the CJCs to a council workshop for discussion. And it has by now. We do have to accept that this is going to happen because it is in the Act. So it is therefore up to us as a council to make sure that this regional work happens in a positive way for Denbighshire and for the region. We do already, as lead members, work quite intensely on a regional basis on many issues. And in the present climate of moving more to regional work, I will be comfortable moving the recommendation forward. So, but could I ask you, Gary, just to add to that, please, at this stage?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I did circulate a briefing note to members last week in respect to this, but just to recap very quickly, the corporate joint committees exist. They're legal entities. They were created by regulations that were made earlier this year and have been legal entities since the 1st of April. There's an emerging legislative framework around their operation. I think we're up to 7 sets of regulations at the moment, and there are more to come. And there's also been some statutory guidance from the Welsh Government about how they should operate, and there's further statutory guidance to come. As the leader said, they have 3 functions. They have a statutory duty to create a strategic development plan for the region. They also have a duty to approve and prepare a regional transport plan for the region. Those are both duties. They also then have a broad economic well-being power. The membership of the CJCs, as members are aware, is the 6 leaders of the local authorities, plus a representative from the Snowdonia National Park, but the National Park representative is only a member for the purposes of the Strategic Development Plan function. The CJC is to go live with its functions from the 30th of June 2022. Some other CJCs are going earlier. I think some will be in February, but the North Wales one is the 30th of June. So there's a lot of things that need to be done in order that the CJC can be in a position to begin to implement its functions. And the Welsh Government has given a grant of £250,000 to the region for the work to be done in setting up the CJCs, which includes extra project management capacity and external specialist advisors, both legal and others. That work is being led by Gwynedd, but is being overseen by the chief executives and the leaders of the North Wales authorities. So one of the things that needs to be done is to understand what the committee structure of the CJC is going to be. The CJC has power to create subcommittees, and the guidance from Welsh Government is that it should have a subcommittee for each of its functional areas. So there would be a committee for strategic development planning, a committee for regional transport planning, and the question that falls to be considered today is what will be the relationship between the CJC and the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. Just to set out the differences between the two, the CJC is a corporate entity. It's been created by law and has its own legal personality. It can enter into contracts, it can employ people, it can hold land, etc. The North Wales Economic Ambition Board is a statutory joint committee created under the provisions of the Local Government Act 1972. And essentially, that committee doesn't have a separate legal personality of its own. It is a committee of the 6 authorities. So if it wants to do any of those things, such as enter into contracts, hold land, employ people, it has to do that through a host authority. And that then means that you have to have a series of back-to-back legal agreements to ensure that the host position is protected. So external legal advice has been sought on what's the most effective way of dealing with the Economic Ambition Board's role in terms of the growth deal in the context of a CJC. And the idea is to avoid duplication, complicated legal arrangements, etc. And the proposal is that the Economic Ambition Board would be positioned within the structure of the CJC whilst retaining its own identity as the Economic Ambition Board. And the method by which this would be done would be by way of a delegation from the 6 local authorities to the Corporate Joint Committee. The rationale behind this is that you then have the benefits of the Corporate Joint Committee's ability to do things without the necessity for complicated back-to-back legal agreements. It's a more streamlined way of doing it. But if you do it by way of delegation, you retain the control over the Economic Ambition Board in a similar way to the control that's exercised now. So currently, members will recall GA2 governance agreement that was entered into by the 6 local authorities and other partners in respect of the operation of the Economic Ambition Board. And what that agreement does, it sets the parameters within which the Economic Ambition Board can make decisions, but it also sets out those decisions which are reserved back to the local authorities so that only they can make the ultimate decision in respect of some of those big issues. And they relate to things like any departure from the outlined business case for the growth deal and any change to the envelope of funding, etc. If it's possible to have the Economic Ambition Board positioned within the structure of the CJC, but subject to a delegation agreement in similar terms to the GA2, then what you would effectively have is a model whereby you avoid the complicated legalities and extra agreements that have to be entered into by a host, but you retain the control through the delegation agreement. And the reason why this is an in-principle decision is that the legislative framework doesn't at present allow for a local authority to delegate a function to a CJC. So currently, a CJC only has the functions that have been given it by law, by regulation. And the law says that Welsh Government can give it certain functions. They're the 3 functions that it currently has, plus an improving education function, which they've decided at the moment not to give it. Or it has functions which are given to it by regulations because local authorities have gone to government and they've asked for regulations to be made to allow those functions to take place, but you can't delegate them. What's being sought from Welsh Government is the ability to delegate, because if you can delegate, you can then put the Economic Ambition Board within the structure and get the benefit of the CJC model whilst retaining the control that you currently have over the Economic Ambition Board under the existing model. So that's effectively the proposal that's being put forward for an in-principle decision. Clearly, because it's an in-principle decision, it will have to come back to the local authorities to make a final decision once it's been established that the appropriate legal conditions are in place. In terms of the rest of the report that's appended to this report, it sets out some of the other steps that will need to be taken. As the leader said, the CJC will need to set a budget by the end of January next year. It will also need to appoint statutory officers. So they're required by law to have a chief executive, a monitoring officer, and a section 151 officer, but that doesn't mean that they have to appoint people or employ people. It could be that they just nominate someone from within the existing chief execs, monitoring officers, 151 officers to be to undertake that role for the CJC. It will need to have standing orders approved, and it will need to have a business plan of how it's going to operate for the first 12 months. But this in-principle decision will help then to clarify what the structure of the CJC is going to be. There are 2 other committees that the CJC has to have by law. So it has to have a governance and audit committee. So it will have to set one of those up, and it has to have a standards committee, but that standards committee can be an existing standards committee, so it could nominate a standards committee within the region that would carry out that function for the CJC. The other thing that will need to be developed will be the scrutiny arrangements for the CJC, and they can either be by the creation of specific new scrutiny committees or by the use of the existing scrutiny regime that's in place across the 6 authorities. But further clarity in respect to scrutiny will come with further regulation and guidance. But that's, as I understand it, the intent, that it will be for the region to determine what those scrutiny arrangements should be. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Gary, for that. Are there any questions from Cabinet members? Bobby, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I don't know about anybody else, but you know, I've listened quite a lot on these now, these CJCs, and the clarifications. You know, this is, it said it's sort of streamlining and improving governance. It's simplifying the way we do things now, but there's so much to read. It's hard to equate it with simplification, but then maybe that's maybe my understanding is not up to scratch. I don't know, but anyway, I'll attempt a question that's not too ridiculous. They've talked about £250,000 to establish and cover the establishment of the CJCs. And they emphasize this is not something that's a money pit. You know, it's establish them and then it'll all fall into place. I appreciate that this is coming into place whether we like it or not. There's an act of Parliament, act of the government saying that it will happen. It's already a legal requirement and it will come into action on the 30th of June. But it also, as well as this establishment and talking about the committees that it's going to be responsible for, it says, unlike the other regional bodies, you know, like PSBs or RPBs, it is a separate body able to employ staff and hold assets. I am just wondering if I've looked through a lot of what both Gary has provided us with, and I've also looked online to try and make myself be a little bit more in understanding of what's happening. But I'm not quite sure of the financial implications of this, both for Wales as a whole and for Denbighshire and the other 6 local authorities, the other 5 local authorities across North Wales. There's 4 of these boards, and I still, after all I've read, don't really understand the financial implications that this may have upon us as a county council.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. I think that was a pretty good question, and it does need clarity on, so I'll look to Gary to provide that clarity now. Diolch, Gary.
Diolch, Arweinydd. I suppose if I just deal with the points that Bobby made in the order that I've noted them. In terms of clarity and simplicity, I think the issue is the CJC exists now, it's a thing, and it will have legal duties from June. And the idea is to try and make the operation of it as simple as possible and as least bureaucratic as possible. So that's one of the aims behind the proposal for the in-principle decision. The second issue in respect of the grant is that the regions were offered a grant by Welsh Government in order to assist them in establishing CJCs, and so the region has accepted that grant, and it will be used for the specialist advice and for the project management capacity needed to set them up. In terms of financial implications as a whole, I can only comment on the legal positions. Steve may have more information about financial implications, but the legal position is that the CJC must each year determine what its budget will be for the following financial year, and it must agree what contributions are to be made by each of the 6 local authorities. If the CJC does not reach that agreement and set that budget by the end of January in each year, then the Welsh Government has a default power to set the budget for the CJC and to tell the individual local authorities what their contribution will be. In the regulations, it does say that the budget that's to be set by the CJC is effectively the contribution required from the local authorities for the expenses of the CJC that are not otherwise met by other funding sources. And I know that the Section 151 officers will be doing work on this, and in the first year, I'm sure that the CJC will probably be finding its feet. but I'm probably not the best person to talk about the financial implications. I can just tell you what the process is.
Okay, thank you, Gary. That's helpful. Can I ask Steve to come in at this point, please?
Diolch, yes, Prandar, everyone. Yeah, so Section 151s are forming groups now to try and get the budget work done in time. So there's 4 key bits, or 3 key bits actually, sorry. So there's the corporate democratic core, which is quite straightforward in that, as Gary's referred to, it's the bit of a monitoring officer, bit of a Section 151 officer, etc. So there's that element. The 2 big ones are the planning and transport element. And Gary's right that the 250,000 is just for the setup costs, so that isn't going to cover any of the ongoing implications of this. So there will be a cost to the local authorities, and we would hope that that would be minimised. But you have to understand that it's been tasked. This body has been tasked with a new responsibility, or a couple of new responsibilities, and if it didn't exist, they could still task all us local authorities to do those actions. So the strategic planning document and the transport plan, it's regional planning that we don't do currently. So we're going to have to work out over the coming months actually how much is it going to cost to deliver that. And there's a huge number of different ways that can be delivered. You would hope that the balance would be actually we can do some from within existing resources, but we might need to invest some more money, and that's what we're trying to work out now. I think we probably need to carry on lobbying Welsh Government to, traditionally, if a new responsibility is announced and it comes to a local authority, then funding comes with it, and that comes through the RSG. So you would hope that Welsh Government may include in future years some funding for the delivery of what they want this body to deliver. So the local the planning plan and the local transport plan. I don't think they will, but that would be the hope, and that's what they would do if it stayed with local authorities. I have a feeling that they won't, and actually this will be a pressure. Now, it's not going to be earth-shattering pressure, but I think we are talking a pressure that we will have to put in during the next budget, but it'll be tens, 100, 200 grand type sort of pressure. I'm guessing at that figure until we've done the detailed work, and there'll be lots of options around the delivery of those plans and how we deliver them. So we'll be coming back, obviously. There's a decision-making process that Gary can go through as to how we agree that budget. But there's no denying, like the North Wales Economic Ambition Board was a cost, and I think we've all thought that we've got something for that investment. We have no option, so we have to fund this, and we have to deliver the requirements. So it's trying to do it in the most cost-effective way. So there will be a cost. I think it's manageable within our budgets at the moment, but I still think we should lobby Welsh Government for additional funding to carry out these new responsibilities, in summary.
But not only that, Steve, if I can just come back, Leader, not only lobby them on that, but lobby them on a business plan of some sort. Let us see, as well as all the wording and all the legalities, let us see the amount of money that's going to be needed. Not just for the North Wales region, but for all of Wales. When we see Chief Executive Officer, Chief Finance Officer, Monitoring Officer, these are all expensive posts, and that's without all the support staff that go with them. And they're talking about holding assets, so presumably that means they're buying somewhere to live, to have their offices or set up. I just feel still unable to understand. I know it's meant to be done to help us all to be more efficient and effective, and all those words that we read in everything we read about it. But I would just like to see in plain old-fashioned black and white what the cost is to us across Wales and to, in particular, us in Denbighshire at some point. So if you could get that across when you're finding out, when you get in touch with the government, that would be good.
Well, just on the process, obviously the budget has to be set at the end of January. So, you know, that's when we will know. That's when we'll have worked that out for Denbigshire's impact and the impact across North Wales. You know, the 151 officers are working to try and minimise this cost, especially in the first year. And you know, that's one of our tasks now is over the next 2 months is to work with those experts in the two fields that we don't know. So the transport and the planning areas, to actually work out actually how much do they need in that first year in order to start this work. As far as the corporate and democratic core element, it's unlikely that these will be additional posts. They'll be, it's likely that it would be existing people adding to their workload. So, for example, you know, David was the Section 151 officer of the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. Someone will do that role going forward, and that you know, that's up for discussion as to how we do that. But I think it's unlikely that we'll have a whole set of new senior officers to service the committee, certainly in the the initial stages.
Okay, Gary, did you want to add to that?
No, just I agree with Steve. I'm sure that nobody's proposing that there be a 7th Chief Exec Monitoring Officer, Section 151 officer, and the arrangements for the Economic Ambition Board were that the host authority in that circumstance just provided that resource. In terms of holding land, I don't think that means that the CJC is looking for premises of its own. It just means that when it's engaged in any of the economic well-being activities, some of the projects around developing employment sites and other sites, it would be possible for the CJC to hold that land during the course of that and be able to acquire and dispose of it, rather than having to have separate arrangements between a host authority and other partners. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate both of your efforts, and I will wait and see. I can see there's other questions coming in.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. I think you're right to raise the financial cost of this, but I think it's when we get to the stage where this is up and running, it's about the region and for us making it value for money, isn't it? That we get a return on the investments, whatever that will be in the short term. As Steve alluded to the Ambition Board, I think we've got a lot more out of that than we put in, but it's been hard work to get that to a good place, and I think we have to make this a positive venture, regardless of the challenge. But I'm sure Julian is waiting to come in when Steve said that, you know, if Welsh Government initiatives provide an extra financial burden to local government, there was an Essex-Jones agreement, which Julian and myself have been fighting in a WLJ or reminding people of, and that's resurrected itself in a way. That's now been heard a lot more than it was in the past. So possibly there will be funding from Welsh Government to help us make this a success, because it's in their interest as much as ours that it works. So we'll see where we go with that. Okay, thank you. Bobby, Mark, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'll turn my camera off just in case. So can I just touch on quickly the cost of democracy, if that's okay, leader? So I understand, I've read the document, but it does talk about the background, and I'll go to number 6, where it talks about the timetable remains challenging, including immediate duties, and one of them is the regional strategic development plan. So obviously we all get elected and we have a lead member for the local development plan, and we all have to come to a consensus, and we communicate with our residents, which have been thousands of people, and we come up with an LDP, hopefully in the end. Who signs that off then? Is it the local authority or is it the new regional body? And what happens if there's a conflict? So I understand what they're trying to do, but I do want them to be open about where the power sits. So if anyone can answer that, because to me it feels like the regional body will sign off our LDP, and if there's a conflict, it's not what our people or elected members want. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Gary?
The duty for the CJC is to prepare and approve a strategic development plan for the region. That's a different layer plan. It's not the local development plan. Each local authority will still be required to produce its own local development plan. It will be for the local authority to determine its local development plan, but there may be aspects of the strategic development plan that they'll need to take into account when doing that. But the local development plan is still a decision for the local authority. This is a new plan that will be developed regionally by the CJC.
If I can come back on that, just an instance, we have 3,000 houses in our plan, but the regional wants 5,000. How do we deal with that, please?
Well, I'm not up. I'm not a
No, but I just need to understand that I believe, reading the documents, that the power sits with the regional body. I think Graham, our chief exec's touched on this. I just want confirmation of if these conflict on numbers are mentioned in both documents.
Mark, can you put the screen off, please? Could you put the screen off, please?
Mark? Yeah. So it's just confirmation of if there is a conflict on numbers, which is in both plans, who has the final say, please?
Okay, does Graham, I'm not sure if Graham wants to come in on that. Gary?
Well, I'll have a go and I'll have a go answering that. Essentially, the CJC doesn't have a role in setting the local development plan. That's the local development plan for the local authority to determine. If you approve a local development plan, then you have to send it off to an inspector, don't you, for that to be considered. And it would be for the inspector to consider whether or not there was a rationale behind the figures in a local development plan vis-a-vis the figures in a strategic development plan. I think the point is the CJC decides the strategic development plan. It doesn't decide the local development plan. You decide the local development plan. But as ever with a local development plan, you do then have to have regard to certain factors, and then you have to be able to argue your case to an inspector as to whether or not you have had sufficient regard to all of the factors that you're required to consider.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, man. Yeah. Okay, any other comments from cabinet members? No, okay. Meirig, please.
Thank you once again. Very quickly, thank you to Gary Williams once again for trying to inform us what's happening. And thank you for Appendix 1, which provides more information to us. I must agree with Councillor Bobby Feely. More costs to taxpayers once again, but it's a legal requirement and we'll have to accept it, I'm afraid. And on page 205 in the report, measuring the Welsh, how can we be sure that in Denbighshire that Welsh will be first as it is in Denbighshire and not as an add-on to think about later? The CJC will have a duty with regards to the Welsh language to agree on a Welsh language scheme, and they'll have the Welsh standards that they need to make sure that they meet those standards. It will be up to the CJC to decide what the Welsh language scheme will include and how they meet the standards, but there will be a legal duty on the CJC, and it will be the CJC's decision with regards to their Welsh language scheme and the Welsh standards. Regulations have been made. I've got the Welsh terminology in front of me. I think that amends the measure to make sure that the same duties as are on local authorities will apply to the CJC as well. So they will have to take the Welsh language into consideration and meet the Welsh language standards. Thank you, Gary. If I can come back in just for a second. As we can see with local authorities across North Wales, not everybody acknowledges Welsh first. Some put it second on signs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've had to change location and change device, so I presume you can all hear me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine, Rhys.
One question, one concern, and one rhetorical question. The question first, I've read through this document and I see that a CJC would have to have someone to audit it, a financial officer, a monitoring officer, and a CEO. This has already been mentioned. It's then hinted in this document that officers of the 6 local authorities could do this. With their present workload, really, it's just a question as to whether it's possible to give this amount of work to hard-working officers anyway. Otherwise, as Councillor Feely has mentioned, it is a case of appointing these officers. So that's my question. Do our officers actually have the capacity to do the extra workload? The concern is that, as far as I can see in this document, there are as yet no statutory arrangements for scrutinising. So that's obviously a concern, and I'll be glad to know when we have an answer to that, or maybe it's in the document and I missed it. And the third one, and Leader, you're going to thank me for this rhetorical question. Will there be a Denbighshire at the end of all of this? Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Gary can start, and I might have to answer the last one.
Okay. Well, in terms of the statutory officers, and of course officers to support the meetings of the CJC, we already absorb that within the region in terms of a number of regional bodies. So, for example, we are the host authority for the AOMB. We're neither the host currently for the Economic Ambition Board and for GWE. So similar arrangements, I'm sure, would be brought in respect of this. Clearly, we'll need to understand what the requirement is in terms of the meeting structure and how often they meet, etc., to understand what support they'll need. But we already support regional bodies, and we always find a way of doing that. In terms, and one of the issues around the EAB, of course, is that if it sits within the CJC structure, then there's no duplication of the EAB out here and the CJC over here. In terms of scrutiny, the guidance from government was that it's for the region to develop the scrutiny arrangements that the region would like to see. So currently, for example, with the North Wales Economic Ambition Board, we have an arrangement where the North Wales Economic Ambition Board programme officers will come to scrutiny meetings at the different local authorities and provide update reports. The statutory framework or piece of statutory legislation that would be relevant is, I alluded to I think it's 6 or 7 sets of regulations already. There is just out for consultation regulations, which will be the Corporate Joint Committee General Wales Regulations 2022, and I understand that scrutiny will be in there. And as I understand it, it will give the region the ability to create the scrutiny arrangements it wants. So you can either create scrutiny committees specifically within the CJC structure, or you can use the scrutiny arrangements that you currently have, or you can create a joint scrutiny committee for the scrutiny of the CJC. But scrutiny arrangements they're not being forgotten. They are going to be dealt with, and it will be a scrutiny arrangement designed by the region.
Okay, and in terms of the concern or comment there, Rhys, this did start off, the starting base for this was a discussion with a minister who wanted to reduce the number of local authorities from 22 to about 10 or 11, and was pretty adamant that that was going to happen. So we batted that off and found a halfway house where we suggested, and I was in those original conversations, about a regional approach to service delivery. And that's what protected the 22 unity authorities. So we've still got 22, but then the risk then of working regional is that we dilute local democracy if we don't get that right. So in the answer to your question, yes, in the long term, there might be something happening beyond our control, but it's up to those who run Welsh government, isn't it, to protect our interests. But it's up to us as well, probably, to be prepared to work in a different way and accept that in the short term, regional working is here to stay. And there are some aspects of regional working where it is better than doing things as 6 authorities, 6 different times. We think of GWE now, which is, I think, is working really well. The Ambition Board, that's working pretty well as well. So there are pluses and minuses, and it's up to us to make sure in the initial stages that the commitment that we show reflects the benefits that we expect to our organisations in the authority. So the answer to your question is yes, in the long term, something else will happen beyond our control. But in the short term, we need to make this work for our residents as local councillors, and which is, for me, the best level of democracy anyway. Diolch, Rhys.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Okay. Right.
Thank you very much.
No, right, I'll come to the recommendations. 3.1, the Cabinet agrees in principle that the functions of the North Wales Economic Ambition Board be transferred by way of a delegation agreement to the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee on condition A, that the statutory framework that the Welsh Government are developing allows for the delegation of the relevant executive functions to a Corporate Joint Committee. B, that the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee agrees to establishment of a subcommittee with membership to be agreed with the councils to undertake the functions of the Economic Ambition Board. This transition is proposed in order to achieve a streamlined governance model, avoiding duplication. A further detailed report on the framework for implementation will be presented to a subsequent meeting of the Cabinet. And I move those recommendations. Is there a seconder, please? Julian, thank you. Will you raise your hands if you support the recommendation, please? Probably, yeah. Who, Tony? Okay. Who, did you raise your hand?
No.
Are you opposing it?
No. I don't know what's happened there.
Are you supporting it, Hugh?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, got there in the end. Diolch yn fawr, that's been passed. Thank you. Agenda item 10, redevelopment of the former Prestatyn Library contract award. Tony?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'll kick off, and no doubt Julian will assist me. So we're here today to appoint a principal contractor for the redevelopment of the former Prestatyn Library, further to the Cabinet decision which was taken on the 21st of September. So in this development, there's going to be 14 one-bedroom accessible apartments for social rent, all having lift access and for 55 and overs. And there'll also be 2 ground floor commercial units. So these apartments were highly energy efficient and will be right in the heart of Prestatyn. So we've gone through a full tendering process has been carried out with a scoring matrix at each of the 5 tenders that were received. Basically, it was 70% price, 30% quality. And coming out of that was Wynne Brothers estimates, which at 3,455,000 was considerably under the budget estimate. So we're pleased to recommend them. So I'll pass it over to Julian now, please. Would you like to come in, Julian?
Thank you, Tony. Nothing to add to that, apart from that I fully support the recommendations.
Okay, thank you both for that. Are there any questions from Cabinet members? No, it looks straightforward, doesn't it? Any questions from other members? No. Okay. Tony, can you come to the recommendation, please?
Yes, certainly, Leader. So the recommendation is 3.1, that Cabinet agree to the adoption and implementation of a DCC construction standard for non-domestic new build projects. Sorry, what am I doing the right one?
You're on the wrong agenda.
You're on the wrong one, Tony.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
In the right meeting.
Yeah, let's try again. Here we go. I haven't changed me. Come on. Right, we'll start again. Yeah. 3.1, the Cabinet approved the award of a contract to Wynn and Sons Limited construction as per the contract award recommendation reports in Appendix 1. 3.2, that Cabinet confirms that it is read, understood, and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessments, Appendix 2, as part of its consideration. And I would move that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second, Chair.
And seconded. Everybody in agreement? Nobody against? Okay, thank you for that. Agenda item 11, finance report. Julian, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. My usual update with regards to the current year's finances. In terms of the overall position, you'll see that the projected overspend has increased slightly from what I was putting forward this time last month to just under 1.35 million. And I'll come to the reason for that in a moment. You'll see at the end of section 4, the last paragraph, and also in Appendix 5 to your report, that we need to formally show the calculation for the council tax base for the next financial year, which is the number of Band D equivalent dwellings in the authority. And you'll see if you go to Appendix 5, which is broken down by individual community area, that the overall figure has increased by some 102 dwellings, I think. We continue to make claims where appropriate from the Welsh Government Hardship Fund. But as we know, that hardship fund will be coming to an end at the end of this financial year. But as I say, we continue to claim what we're eligible for up until then. Appendix 3 in the report gives some context and wording with regards to the variances from service budgets from last report. And you'll see that primarily that upward movement I've just mentioned is down to an increase in residential placement costs within the Education and Children's Services service. One that we always flag up as being quite volatile, and we have little control over who presents. So we're at this moment in time that figure has increased by approximately £180,000. In terms of the major corporate capital plan schemes, you'll see there those listed in Appendix 4 as per usual. The only one probably I need to make a comment upon is the Queen's Market proposal and project. There'll be a further report coming back, I think, in February time for us to let the phase 1 contract. Work at the moment is being carried out to value engineer the costs where appropriate, but I think it's probably fair to say that it is likely that there will be a requirement for some additional funding to be allocated to this scheme. I don't particularly want to, I'm sure members might have questions, but we're not at a stage yet where we're probably able to go into any great detail as to the reasons for that at the moment, because we're still going through that value engineering exercise. But this is just some advance notice to flag up that we potentially will be coming back in the new year in regards to that scheme. All of the other schemes are, as you'll see, either coming to a close or on target and on budget. So I think probably that's all I wanted to say as a very quick introduction. I don't know whether Steve wants to highlight anything or add anything I've missed out.
No, Julian, I think you've covered everything. No, thank you.
Okay, in that case, we'll go to questions, Leader.
Thank you, Julian, for that. Questions from Cabinet members? No, okay, that's clear. Are there any other questions from members? No, that's clear. Okay. Julian, can you come to the recommendations, please?
I will do. I'm just scrolling up to them here. So the advantages of going on at just past 1 o'clock, aren't there, on the agenda? Recommendation 3.1 is that members note the budget set for 2021-22 and progress against the agreed strategy. And 3.2, the members approve the council tax base for setting the 22-23 budget as detailed in Appendix 5. So I'd move those two.
Okay, will someone second that? Mark has seconded it. Everybody in agreement? Nobody against? No, okay, thank you. That's been moved. And we come to the last agenda item, which is the Cabinet Forward Work Plan. Gary, please, could you take us through that?
Yes, the work plan is as set out. There's one additional request that I've had to bring a report regarding an extension of the contract with DLL. I'll just need to check with report authors as to the length of the agenda in January, so it will either come in January or February.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any points members want to raise on the Cabinet Forward Work Plan? No? Okay, well, that's the end of the meeting. This is the last Cabinet of the year. Can I just thank you, Cabinet members, for your support throughout the year? And can I thank all members for their contribution to the Cabinet debate? It's really helpful when members do test and challenges during the Cabinet's conversations. And as we could see today from the Welsh education strategy, that the input from members not on Cabinet is really helpful and adds value to the end results of the Cabinet. So from me, thank you for that. Can I wish you all a happy Christmas and a good new year, and please stay safe and get after those booster jabs. But thank you for everything and see you next year. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ho, ho, ho.